Today I'm sharing with you a really cool cardigan that I've made into a coat again. You'll see some fake piping, some fake leather details that you're not going to be expecting. It'll be a fun one. Sneak peek. Keep watching. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing. In this channel you will see a lot of sewing content, practical footage, up close shots of things that I'm sewing, and maybe you can apply these techniques and little hacks to similar things that you're working on at home. Now today I've got a cardigan to share with you, and back in February for my birthday I was gifted this pattern by a very good friend. You know who you are, so thank you so much. I had mentioned to her that I liked this cardigan that was at that time a recent release by Cashmerette. The cardigan is called Fuller Cardigan. I thought it had interesting features that I had not seen in other cardigan patterns, and that's why I thought it was cool. This cardigan comes in two different views, but they have similarities. One is that they have facings to finish the insides of the neckline. Depending on the view, it could be, you know, wider or thinner, but they're interfaced facings, and I like that. They also have bust darts. This is a style designed for knit fabrics, and it's not really common to see darts in these types of styles, and I've always wondered why not? Why can't you sew a dart in a knit, garment? And so seeing that there, it just means that the fit around the bust is obviously going to be much better. There's also darts on the Raglan sleeve. Now that is a more common feature that you will see, but not that much on knit patterns. Sometimes knit patterns don't have that dart. I always think it's good that it's there. So those are the things I look at in patterns when I think I want to sew that, because they have features that I know are going to allow customization and to have a better fit. The differences between the two views are mainly length and the shape of the necklines. As you can see, view A has a deeper V neckline, hits the hip, has a longer sleeve with a cuff, and view B is cropped at the waist with a band there on the hem, and the neckline is higher, the facing is narrower, and the sleeves look shorter with cuffs also, but they're not full length. So just looking at these views, neither of these views are ones I would make straight out of the printer. For me, a cardigan means a coat, because that is the type of outerwear that I would need for layering in my winter. I am almost in winter now, and I'm wearing my short sleeves, When it does get chilly, a nice longer cardigan for me is like a coat. So I like coatigans. I like my cardigans to look like coats. And if I have enough fabric, I will lengthen them. View A is the one that catches my eye better. The adjustment for length will be less. The types of fabrics for this style don't require that much stretch. 15% horizontal stretch, medium weight. I would not choose to make this in a lightweight knit. I don't think it would sit right. All the features, the darts, everything, it's just not gonna work. Any medium weight knit is good. The one I've chosen is a Melange Lurex sort of thing. I've shown it before in a fabric core video, and I did purchase it for making a sweater. It is a type sweater knit. So your nice sweater knits I think would be okay as long as they're not too lightweight. Cashmerette functions with limited sizing, so it's from sizes 12 to 32. I've heard opinions saying that this is a really inclusive size range, but actually I would say that's controversial because it doesn't include sizes below 12, and I know that many women who are sizes below 12 also have difficulties fitting their bust. So mainly Cashmerette has 3 separate drafts, one for a CD cup, one for an EF, and one for a GH. These are drafted for a woman that's 5'6". I always have to do length adjustments with these patterns. In regards to the intended fit, this style has 0 ease at the bust, so there's no extra room at the bust, and there's no negative ease, so it's not going to be like tight, but it's going to have the measurement of your actual bust and the size that you choose. So that's fine. It's a knit style. It's not a boxy style. It's sort of slim fitting up here, and then at the hips you're going to have a bit of room, about 3 inches depending on the size. Quite roomy at the waist as well. So I like these styles that are designed to be fitted up here and then have room at the bottom. I think they're the most flattering ones, so all good with that. This pattern also has 2 different sleeves that you can choose, a standard Raglan sleeve or an adjusted bicep sleeve. So the full bicep adjustment sleeve has 2 inches more of ease around the full bicep than the standard sleeve. If you saw my recent video last video I posted, you saw a little bit of my struggles and my journeys about fitting the bust, and we've had quite a nice conversation there in the comments. It is a difficult area to fit usually for a lot of people, and gone are the days when I was 15 and I wasn't fully developed yet. I had an A cup, B cup, fitting was a non-thing. But you know, I'm not 15 anymore, obviously, and things have changed in my body. I have a larger cup size than before, and I think when I'm sewing my clothes, I make fit a really high priority for me, even if that takes me longer and I have to try on several times and make adjustments, you know. I don't take it as a given that because Cashmerette does my cup size, that the bust height is also going to match mine. I never take that as a given. With Raglan sleeves, it's more difficult to do flat measurements because the highest part of the shoulder here that I take as a reference for styles that have a full piece on the front, I don't have it because it's the Raglan sleeve covers it there. So I did a little bit of paper fitting. I pinned the Raglan sleeve on. I pinned even the shoulders and just placed it on myself to see where the dart on this cardigan is going to hit me. And you can see in this picture here, there's a blue dot there, as always. And I know because I've sewn with this brand before, even though they have my cup size, I still have to lower the bust dart by 1 1/4 inch. So I did that, I lowered it, and then I cut out my cardigan. I know these patterns are short-waisted for me. I am pretty short-waisted, but these usually tend to draft a waist even higher than mine. And I know that because I know the brand and I've sewn the patterns. So I added at the waist 1 1/2 inches, the torso. And because I like my cardigans long, I added 11 inches at the bottom, just when the pattern goes straight down at the hips. In total, my cardigan is 12 1/2 inches longer than the original that would just hit like the hip. You know, I want a cardigan, I don't want a cardigan. While I was sewing this, I constructed the sleeves and then tried it on myself like a cape, still with all this dangling down there, just to check that my adjustment was correct on my body. What I'd done with the paper can be approximate sometimes. I wanted to make sure before I went in and sewed the dart actually, because unripping a dart on a knit yeah, you don't want to be wasting your time doing that. It's really hard because the thread just buries itself into the fabric, especially this one was a bit spongy like. So no, I wanted to check, so I did that. And yeah, of course, the adjustment I made was pretty spot on. If I'd sewn the original dart, as you can see there, it would have been above my bust and it wouldn't have looked great, of course. This style is not a complex one. It doesn't have many pattern pieces. You have a back, you have fronts too, of course. You have raglan sleeves, cuffs, and then the facings are composed with several pieces inside to take the shape of this neckline and the raglan sleeves. But otherwise, it is a sort of simple pattern to put together, although I didn't make it simple for myself, and you're going to see why. I wanted to add little details. I wanted to have fun. When I'm working with solids, I like highlighting the seams, you know, top stitching sometimes. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. This time I thought I'm going to make fake piping. I had the perfect color to contrast, although it's not a contrast because it's the same color. It is a leather look jersey that I've been using for a multitude of projects. I still have little bits left and I was able to cut my pieces. That was really cool. Then I wanted to do some slits on the side to add a little bit of detail and have some of that fake leather look jersey on there as well. So in Up Close and So Personal, you're going to see all those things. How to add fake piping onto seams. Could be raglan sleeves, can be any other seams that you would like. I also added them onto the cuffs, and you're going to see how to do this super cool slit detail that you can do on anything really. And these things just really make the garment mine. It is the original design with these little things sprinkled in, so let's hop in and look at that. I'm using this leather look jersey with the leather look side up to make these fake pipings. I'm going to add to the raglan sleeves. So this is 3 centimeters wide or 1 1/4 inch. That's the width there. When you fold that in half and then sew with the 3/8 seam allowance, you're just going to have a tiny bit left poking out of the seam, and that's going to be the fake piping. I think it's going to look cool. It's the same color as my main fabric, sort of the same color, and it's going to look nice. This is the back piece. That's the shape where the raglan sleeve will be attached to. I have pinned my fake piping pieces first, and then I hand basted them on the edge, and I've done the same for the front there along. So these pieces were just folded onto each other, wrong sides together, as you can see. That's how they look. And now I can just forget that they're there. I can just treat this as one piece and just go ahead and sew my raglan sleeve on like normal. This pattern uses a 3/8 seam allowance, so when I sew it there, I'll have an excess there a little bit, and because I was super careful to cut these super accurately, and I'm gonna be careful to sew my seam allowance super accurately, I'm gonna have the same width along here. I think it'll be a nice add to this pattern just to highlight the raglan seams. I think hand basting is a good idea because then you don't have to worry about anything shifting and getting wonky piping lines that might wiggle, you know, a little bit while you're sewing. This is the front arm side. This is where I pin the binding, as you can see, the basting stitch, and I have placed the sleeve on the back. I have single notches there that match there. And now I'm just gonna sew this at 3/8 seam allowance, and then when that's sewn, you can see that's gonna peek through there. I prefer to sew with the bulkier thing on top, meaning the front arm side that has the binding attached to it already with the hand basting, and I have the sleeve on the bottom. So I just really want to make sure that my seam allowance is really exact when I'm sewing. I don't see any other way where I could have put that fake piping in there without hand basting it. It would just be a hot mess, really. Okay, I've sewn that seam. You can sort of see it there at 3/8. I was super careful to keep a really even seam allowance. And now when I open this, voila, fake piping. I think it looks really cool. Now the fake piping will look like this. The seam allowance will go towards the sleeve. I've sewn the shoulder dart there, as you can see, so seam allowance will go into the sleeve. And so that's how it's going to look when I wear it. So I'll just sew all the other sleeves as per usual and construct this as normal. These are the facings for the cardigan, and they're composed of several different pieces. These long ones, looking at them from the wrong side, the interface side, you can see the right side is there. They need to curve in with the shape of the cardigan. When you're looking at it like that, it's easy to get confused and sew these long pieces the other way around maybe. Although it shouldn't happen because it's not going to match the shape of the seam there. So this little short one here has a notch that's going to match the shoulder dart, and this back one is going to match the back, and that is going to be the raglan seam there and there. So it's really easy to now go and put these right sides together to the edge of the cardigan and just sew this facing on. All these are done with 3/8 seam allowance, super neat. To sew the facing onto the cardigan, I have the interfaced facing on top and the cardigan on the bottom. I feel like sewing the more structured pattern piece that is interfaced, that is a little bit more stable, putting it on the top is easier. If you put the less stable pattern on top, you know, it might start stretching a little bit, getting a few puckers. I think this method works best and it just gives us smoother results. I'm reaching the area that has the short little pieces of facing that matches the raglan sleeves. You can see my fake piping coming from there, and that the seam allowances of these raglan sleeves are pressed towards the sleeve. You can see there, this notch matches the shoulder dart, so everything's matching really well. This is where I have a horizontal pin, and these are the exceptions where I will sew over the pin, but I'll hand crank this area so I don't crash it with the needle. So just before I go over the pin, I'll hand crank this area there to make sure, and then I take this pin out. Cardigan has 3/8 seam allowance everywhere on the sides, and after I'd cut it out, I thought about doing some slits on the side. Obviously doing slits with such a small seam allowance, they're not going to look that great. It can be doable, but it's not going to look nice. So because I've been playing with this contrast leather look jersey, I'm going to add these to the sides. I've just been thinking about it in my sleep and I figured out how I'm going to do it. Basically, these will be on the side. I just cut them a random length, 13 inches there, it can be any length. And then the width here is 2¼ inches. So I have 4 pieces because each slit has 2 sides, you know. So at the sewing machine, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with that. It's going to be really easy and it's going to look really cool. I've got these 4 pieces here. I have serged just one of the long edges. So one is raw, the other one is serged. I've got that there. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to attach these to the side seams on the bottom of the cardigan. What you're seeing here is the sleeve piece sewn, 3/8 seam allowance. I have serged the edges separately so that it looks like that. And I have just sewn up to there, really, just below the sleeve seam. This is still open. At the bottom here, you can see that the shape going down is straight. It's not flared out like that or in or anything like that. And because the shape is completely straight, it's really easy to do this hack. If it had been flared out, I wouldn't have done this hack at all. I wouldn't have done slits on a flared shape, you know, in the first place. I don't like that. Let's just open that and we'll have one of these. It can be any of them. They're going to be 4 of these done exactly the same. And what I'm going to do is place the right sides together. Now my right side of this thing is the shiny one. That's my right side. So I'm going to place that there, one of the raw edges, and the serged edge will be this way. I'm going to place this along, but not right up to the edge, about 3/8 of an inch below. And I'm going to be sewing this there at 3/8 from there, or from the edge at 3/4 of an inch. So I'll just make sure that the distance there is nice and even, as you can see. And I will just be using a straight stitch and I'm going to sew there. So I'm going to be sewing from the edge of the cardigan in at 3/4 of an inch. But from that edge, it's 3/8 of an inch in. So that's how that looks from the bottom up to there. They're all the same length, so they're all going to be the same on all the sides. And I'm going to repeat that 4 times. After sewing all these 4 bits of contrast onto the side seams, you can see there, all you have to do now is flip it and now press it down. So now you can see that this leather look side of the fabric, which I've chosen to be the right side of the fabric, will be visible there. You can see that now I have sort of extended the side seam on this area, and now this part here is going to be visible, a portion of it. Here we have the side seams that haven't been sewn. That's how they look on the bottom. I've just pressed them. I've got them right sides together, and I'm just going to align these together. At the bottom it doesn't really matter that much. I'm just going to pin that together there, but up here it does matter that they align. There, I'm going to put a pin matching these seams that I made there, so that they're at the same place, like on top of each other basically, and that these raw areas match right there, because from this raw area that I added as extra down, I'm going to measure 1 inch. So that's where I'm going to sew my side seam up to where that mark is. So I have all this side seam that I haven't sewn yet. I've sewn a little bit there. Now I have to go down and catch the bastard, all that down, and then up to there, and I'll sew with a 3/8 seam allowance from there to there, and it'll catch this. So up here is the sleeve and everything, you know, the Raglan sleeves. I've sewn partially with 3/8 seam allowance already, and I'll just pick up from where I stopped before. Okay, so here I'm getting to this part there. You can see the mark where I'm going to stop sewing, 1 inch further from the raw edge there. This pin, I'm leaving it because it's making sure that they're aligned one on top of each other properly. So you can see I've kept my 3/8 seam allowance originally from, you know, the original pattern, and then I have that extra bit there dangling. Okay, so that's sewn, and let's flip it to see how it's going to look on the right side. And that's how it's going to look. So that's the side seam there. The seams inside will be pressed open, and then we have that little bit of fake leather poking through there. There is a raw area there, but it's going to fix, and I'll show you that in a bit. So I have of the main fabric 3/4 of an inch. I want to fold that in half to 3/8 there. And that's how the pattern would have been originally. If I hadn't have done this, I would just have 3/8 folded in there, and I still have those 3/8 folded in. Only this extension is wrapping over it, making it larger in the inside here, and on the outside making it look super pretty here. So from the edge I have 3/8 of an inch that has this leather look thing. So that's how that looks, and then I just have to do the same with the other side. So I'm working on my lap. I'm almost at the bottom, and the way I'm going to finish this hem before I get to the bottom is just open this up, fold this up by 3/4 of an inch. That is the hem allowance I've chosen to do. So I've folded that up. This is eyeballing because I sort of know what 3/4 looks like, but I should measure it. Yep, it's exactly 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so that's folded up, and now I'm just going to fold this the same way, like that, and on this side it's going to look like that. So the hem is going to come from behind this extension. Okay, so that's looking pretty neat. It's been pressed, folded back, and I have hand basted that on nicely. I have pressed the hem up by 3/4 of an inch and then folded that on top. As you can see, it's going to be nice and clean. And at the top here, you see this raw area there. I've cut a square that's 1.5 inches, you know, a square. And I'm going to fold it in like that on all extremes, hand baste it so that it's super neat. And I'm going to sew that on top there, and that will cover that raw area and just make it look cool. I tried stitching in the ditch, I tried edge stitching, and for some reason the combination of the fabrics and the layers I have in there just did not sit right with my machine. So I've got my regular presser foot and I'm just sewing on the edge there, trying to not go into that. This is the bottom of one of the center fronts. This is the facing here, interfaced, understitched, so that will go back there. The pattern had the facing come a little bit shorter there, and another method with a mitered corner and things like that, but it's not going to work with what I'm doing. I'm using a smaller hem allowance. I don't want to lose much length of all the length that I've added. So I'm just going to do what I always do when I have a facing like this, and just flip it right sides together like that. Now my understitching came up to there, it didn't come all the way down so that I can do this. And then I'm just put a pin there. I'm using a 3/4 hem allowance for my cardigan. So I'm just going to sew at 3/4 there up to there. And that's it. And then flip it to the right side. So this is the way I like to finish blouses, jackets, anything that has a facing up to the bottom. I'll just trim away here a bit of excess bulk from there. And then I'll just fold these onto themselves like that, that little corner, or flip it this way, whatever. And then just flip. And I'll pretty much get a nice crispy corner right there without having to trim into the seam allowance. So that's how it's going to look at the bottom, and then the hem is going to come from behind at the 3/4 that I'm doing all the way through. You can see I've already sewn that there, and I had partially hand basted the hem there. So now I can just go ahead and sew this bit of the hem. And I don't like sewing from the edge over here. I'll probably sew from there onwards. It's too bulky there, so I'd rather just leave. This is my cardigan. It's a really rich burgundy color. I love it. It's got sprinkles of metallic things in there. The Lurex, I'm not really sure what that is, but that's what the fabric is called. So it's a really nice sweater knit. It's nice and warm and soft. And you can see the details there of the piping coming out. So this is not real piping, it's fake piping. And I have mixed feelings about piping. I don't actually like the real piping. I think it's too bulky, and I would never do a piping that's like another color. Like I wouldn't have done like black piping, or I don't know. I like it the same because I just want these details to be discreet. I don't want to scream to the world, look at my raglan sleeves. You know, I want them to be seen and noticed, but just discreetly. So that was super fun to do, and I don't really see another way of doing it nicely than by hand basting it on the edge. I would see that slipping and then having really uneven widths here of what pokes out of the seam. So it didn't really take that long to do. And at the end, I decided to put them on the cuff as well. That was not planned, and that was something I did towards the end, and I think that looks cool too. Now inside, I'll turn this around. You can see facings in here. I'm a firm believer in block fusing for facings, whether it be knit or woven projects. I have had recent things happen to me when I didn't block fuse. I thought, oh, I'll just not do it this time, and then my facing shrunk like no tomorrow. So it's something that I will always do, whether it's in the pattern instructions or not. And actually, it will seldom be in any pattern instructions. It's just a sewing technique that I've learned over the years and that I've really adopted and is sort of ingrained. And I did that with this. You can see there how I've cut larger pieces, fused those larger pieces of the pattern pieces, put them on top after fusing them, and then cut out my facings. And that's how I can ensure these facings stay the same shape, the same size, they don't shrink, and then they're going to fit the garment really well inside. I have a comment about the construction. In the pattern it said that you could fold the edges of the facings in by 3/8 of an inch and top stitch. I think that's super bulky. I would rarely want to do that, even with wovens. I don't want bulk there, so I don't ever do that. But I'm glad it said in the instructions, or you can serge the edges. Those are decisions that you can make on your own, of course. But I know that some people really like to follow what it says there. So if it says that there's more than one option, I like that. But of course, I'm always going to do what I like the best, you know? I don't really take the instructions there as an absolute. You know that about me already. So that's that. It said that understitching the facing was optional. I would never not do that. I would always do it, even with a knit. The facing's just always going to be better and lie inside so much better. I have top stitched the facing down. From the edge there, I chose to have a distance of 1 1/4 inches or 3 centimeters. It's usually a standard of what I like to sew. Even if the facing is wider than that, you can see there's a little bit there. That's what I like visually on the outside. Although you can barely see that top stitching, it does keep the facing down super neat. And if you know me, I did hand baste all that down first before sewing it, you know. As I mentioned, the pattern had several darts on the shoulder here. It's partially covered by the facing, and darts inside. And you know, if you think that sewing a dart on a knit is harder, it's exactly the same. Nothing different really. I start from the tip and go to the wider bit. That's a personal preference. I know a lot of people do it the opposite way, but I feel that I can control the tip like exactly where I let the needle fall right on the edge, so it doesn't create a weird looking pucker there. That's just how I do it. Nothing really special about the darts. You just sew them. It's not like something different or special just because it's a knit fabric, you know. Darts on a really lightweight knit might be a little bit wonky and tricky, but that's not the recommended fabric, so a medium weight knit will cope really fine with this. This is a slit detail that I was super excited to do. I had been dreaming about this actually in my dreams and figured out how I was going to do it. I did put a lot of thought into how I was going to do it and how I wanted it to look, the width and everything. So those measurements I gave you are exactly what this turned out to be. There is that little square. I did baste the edges under because it was such a little fiddly thing. I really wanted it to be accurate, and once I had it basted, then I placed it on there and sewed it, so that covers that raw area that I had on the top and it makes it look cool. So I love this. I just think it's so discreet and so cool. I'm just so like enamored with that little detail. And on the inside, I also had some raw little bits, and that's how I finished it on the inside. I grabbed a spare piece of bias tape that I've just made that matched rayon. It's very non-bulky tape, and I just wrapped that around there. I sewed that little piece on by hand invisibly, And so if there was like a windy day and my cardigan flapped open or whatever, what is going to be seen on the inside is really cute too. So I really like that. Let's see how it fits. This is the total length. I've got it with my Presto tunic dress from Love Notions, and I've got matching shoes, of course, burgundy to match these. Small heel as always. I like this length for a cardigan always, just to cover the length of my skirts. So probably mid-knee for my cardigan, and my dresses and skirts will be above the knee. So this is my preferred length. Here you can see the slit that I made so much effort to achieve, and it's super nice. I love the detail there of the little square and the fake leather, how that looks. I think it's a really discreet detail there on the side. Here you can see the detail of the piping on the cuffs. So just between them, sewing them on the round, I put that in there the same as I did for the sleeves, and I think it gives it a nice little touch as well. On the side there's a bust dart there, and it's at my bust height because I had to modify it as always, but I'm glad it's there. I think it's discreet, and I would only do this if I had the same color on something formal like this. So I really like that. The finish around the neckline is super clean with the facings in there. It took me a while to sew, but I like how that finishes, and I like this deep V that this creates. So this is supposed to have buttons on the picture. There's 3 buttons there. Nah, I prefer it like that. I think this is okay, and yeah, all the details are enough, and I don't have matching buttons. I don't want to put like any random button there. Here I've got my cardigan over my Vivace dolman dress that I made out of chiffon. It's got matching colors. I would always choose dresses or silhouettes underneath that aren't full. Like I wouldn't use a dress with a fuller skirt or a skirt that's just full. I want what goes underneath to be less voluminous, so this area doesn't poof out, you know. So you can see the cardigan is quite longer than this length, and that is what I always want. And that is why I always make my cardigans longer. This is my style of coat. You can see the length difference there is quite nice. I wouldn't want my cardigan to finish just above what I'm wearing underneath. So this mid-knee length for cardigans and coats is perfect. In the end, this project ended up taking deceptively longer time than I had anticipated. I started in the morning, thought, oh, I'll finish by lunch. And no, it took me to the night because, yeah, it took me ages. But I'm so happy with it. I think it's so nice. It's going to match some of the dresses that I like to wear. With these long line type cardigans or coats, I wouldn't wear anything that's full underneath, like a full skirt or a dress with a full skirt. I would keep it simple underneath, just streamlined to not create bulk at the bottom of the cardigan and have it poof out. So for styles that are fuller skirts, you know, like fuller dresses, which are not many in my wardrobe, I would go with just a jacket that hits the high hip or something like that. That would be my approach to styling these types of cardigans. And I've made several in the past from different brands. I like them all. I enjoyed this one. I enjoyed the darts. I like the fit. I liked that little facing. It was really cool. I like that deep V there, and I would leave it without buttons. I wanted to share with you all those little things that you can add to things. Doesn't have to be this pattern. You can add this on other things, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.